All right, so we should be live now. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We're really excited to show you builds. It's something the team's been working on for a long time, and I know a lot of you have really been looking forward to it. Today I have Dustin Shao with me. My name's Caitlin Cash, and I'm part of the marketing team. Dustin is our product manager at Gatsby, and he's going to take you through our awesome builds demo. And Kyle may or may not be joining at some point, but we'll see. So Dustin, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Caitlin. So actually, I'm head of product at Gatsby, which is super exciting. And so, yeah, I'm super excited to share what we've been working on the last few months. And it's particularly a feature that I think really every user of Gatsby has needed, and particularly one that lots of users of Gatsby have wanted. So what we're launching today and what we've just launched is builds. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do a quick demo of using Gatsby builds. I'm going to set up a site with Gatsby Cloud. I'll trigger my first build. I'm going to then trigger a content change. And then finally, I'll trigger a source change. And then each of which will trigger a build so you can see just how compelling and just how fast Gatsby builds are today. Finally, to get that routing, that global routing with the CDN across the globe, basically having my content be routable as closely as possible to my end users, we'll deploy to Netlify, which is going to be a pretty cool demo. So with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right, so first things first is I've already logged into Gatsby Cloud. If you haven't logged in, of course, go ahead and log in and it'll sync up with GitHub. And so my Gatsby site lives on my DShao organization. So I'll go ahead and create a site. In this case, I already have a Gatsby site, but if you don't have a Gatsby site, you can go through this flow and we'll actually create one for you, auto provision any necessary resources, for instance, the CMS, the GitHub repo itself, so on and so forth. But in this case, I already have one. So we'll click next. I'll select my organization, which gives me access to all of my repos. And then here, I'm going to use this maggieanddustin.com site. So what I'm actually going to be showing today is my wedding website. And so my wedding website happens to be a monorepo. I have some of my backend infrastructure in this repo, as well as the front-end infrastructure, my Gatsby site. And this lives in this directory path site. So today, Gatsby Cloud supports monorepos by default without any configuration. So here you have optional integrations. So in this case, this website is powered by Contentful. Contentful is my backing CMS that with Gatsby source Contentful, I can pull in this content, I can expose it via GraphQL, this notion of content mesh. And at the end of the day, I can build my Gatsby site that's kind of decoupled from this source. So first, let's go ahead and connect it. I'll authorize with Contentful. And then here I have access to all of my spaces. So in this case, I'm going to use this wedding and blog space. What this will do is this will wire up the webhooks. This will wire up the access tokens from Contentful to Gatsby Cloud without you having to do anything besides authenticate with Contentful. So you can see here, it's installed the build webhook, it's installed the environment variables, and it's also installed the preview extension so that you can preview, for instance, like a page automatically with Gatsby Preview. We'll go ahead and set up my site. Here, I'm going to go ahead and delete this deploy URL. Don't need it. And then you see everything else has been done for me. So access token, host, and space ID for both preview and builds have been automatically created. So as you can see, this now triggered our first fast build. And so this first fast build is going to be from a cold cache. So we're going to install dependencies. We're going to run our first build. And then every subsequent build is going to be even faster. And so because we persist the state of the world, because we keep the resources around between builds, Gatsby builds are able to be consistently faster by 2.5 times. And then on subsequent builds, up to 20 to 60 times faster, depending on the kind of site you have and the complexity of, for instance, how many images you have. So if we're curious, we can go through, look at the project details. We can see right now it's installing our project dependencies. So while this is happening, I want to kind of just go through some of the other things that we've automatically exposed. So concurrently with this first build, we've also exposed a preview instance. And so in the same way that this build is now building, this preview is installing project dependencies. This preview Think of it like a live running version of Gatsby developed in the cloud that's listening for changes. So preview has been launched in Gatsby Cloud for several months now. So with the launch of builds, you still get preview. Your content editors still get this great like instant reload experience, and then you can also build out your Gatsby site faster than anyone else can with this builds feature. So we'll go back. And so how this builds feature works is first, as you can see, we've triggered this production branch deploy. With any other branch deploy, so for instance, if I create a new branch called demo, and if I push a commit to that demo, it's going to trigger a new build. And then so every subsequent build will kind of take that state from that previous build and keep it around. So the first build, like I said, is going to be about 2.5 times faster. And every subsequent build is going to be ever faster. So if you're curious in like reading more about this, Kyle, who's attending now, has a great blog post on gatsbyjs.org/blog that I urge you to go read. It kind of shows what we're offering with Gatsby builds today, which is Gatsby builds, which I'll be demoing, as well as Lighthouse reports. So it should be getting pretty close to done. We can also view the raw logs. So we can see here, we're done building in 61 seconds. We're uploading the build and we're live. So in just under 2 minutes and 26 seconds, we've built and published this version of my Gatsby site. So as you can see, I click through, this is my wedding website. So great, pretty neat. But what I'd like to show now is how fast subsequent builds are with Gatsby Cloud. So my wedding website has this notion of a person, and a person lives in Contentful. And so I'm going to add some bio text for my best man at my wedding, who's my brother. So Austin has been one of my best friends since childhood. So of course, he's my best man. So we'll go ahead and publish this. And you can see, because we wired up Contentful, we've just listened and responded to that webhook, and we're triggering another build on the master branch because we published. So the published webhook that we exposed has been pushed to by Contentful. Therefore, we'll trigger a new build of your Gatsby application. So this subsequent build will be much faster because unlike other continuous deployment solutions, we keep the state of the world around. So we'll keep the cache around, we'll keep the public folder around, and then we'll parallelize work with a feature called distributed builds that you can enable by upgrading these two versions of packages. And this will be that 10x, 20x, 30x improvement because we'll distribute the work off of the Gatsby open source process, particularly generating images, one of the potentially slower pieces of the Gatsby build, and distribute it across many cloud functions in Gatsby Cloud. So you can see the second build took 45 seconds. We'll go through, we'll look at the wedding party. You can see my bio from my brother has been updated. And now we'll do some more stuff. So Gatsby Cloud exposes two webhooks. So, well, Gatsby Cloud exposes a webhook for publishing, and also, so that's the content trigger. And then we have a source trigger. So in other words, in Git. So if we make a push to this branch, which is going to be master. So here I changed the 8 to 8th. We'll update this date. We'll push this to master, and then we'll go back. So Gatsby Cloud is kind of sitting here, waiting, idling for invocations to this functionality. So because we're syncing up with GitHub, the GitHub publish webhook is going to invoke our publish webhook. And so now we'll build out this version of the site with this most recent change. So you can see the second build took around 45 seconds. I would expect this third build to take around the same. So while we're doing that, so the hosted version that we supply by default is what we want to route all of our traffic to a CDN. And so in the same way that inputs, notably Contentful, Cosmic, Dado, more and more coming, in the same way that inputs are fed to the Gatsby process, Gatsby Cloud can invoke outputs. So for instance, we can deploy to a global CDN. Netlify is a great CDN. So we'll go ahead and connect. We'll authorize. And then I'm going to actually create a new site here. So I'm going to call it Maggie and Dustin. What is today's date? 2020-01-27. I'll add this to my existing DSHA team. And so this will actually create the Netlify site and then publish to this site after every successful build of this master branch. So we'll go ahead and trigger this in just one sec. I'm having a little issue. Let me try this one more time. So we'll connect, we'll authorize. In this case, let's just sync with a different one that already exists. I might be having some connection issues. Okay, well, we'll show that piece later. So if we go back to our main tab, here we go. All right, so that hosting integration did trigger. Unfortunately, it did not work, but we still deployed to our infrastructure. So let's go here. Let's check this out. And we see the 8 has been converted to an 8th because of the source change. Additionally, one of the really amazing features of Gatsby Cloud is this feature called reports. So if we go back here, you can see on every single pull request, on every single branch deploy, we run a series of Lighthouse reports. So here, because I'm using Gatsby, you can see I get 100 really across the board. So in this short little demo, what we've done is we've wired up Gatsby Cloud with an existing Gatsby site in GitHub. We've listened to publish events from Contentful, as well as publish events from GitHub. And then we've deployed this Gatsby application quicker than anyone else can, 2.5 times faster consistently, up to 10x or even 60x in some circumstances. So with all of that said, I hope you found this demo as compelling as I believe it is. I can't wait to see what you'll build with Gatsby Cloud and generally, what you think of this great new amazing feature that we've just launched.
Great. Now we do have a few questions popping up in the chat, Dustin. And for everybody else who is listening, watching, if you do have any questions, please do drop those into the YouTube chat. Our first question is from Sergey, and it's a long question, so we'll go through it and then we can take it piece by piece if we need to. So the question is, what's Gatsby's suggested way of handling styling, UI theming, etc.? Is theme UI the preferred way? He's tried a few different frameworks like Grommet, Material UI, and was disappointed for various reasons. He's planning to try theme UI and found out it was built by people who are now at Gatsby, and he wonders if that's a good thing to invest his time in.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Sure.
So one of the great things about Gatsby is that we're relatively unopinionated about a lot of things. So we're unopinionated about sources of data. So if you like Contentful, if you like WordPress, if you like Drupal, like kind of keep using those tools that you like, and that same kind of alignment on bring your data, choose which tools you like is true also of styling solutions. So you can use vanilla CSS with Gatsby. You can use CSS modules, which is a great choice, kind of solve some issues with encapsulation. Or you can use some of these newer CSS and JS libraries, style components, emotion. You kind of choose. The really cool thing about about choosing some of them is that if your team likes emotion, if your team likes theme UI, if you're kind of getting a lot of benefits and from developer ergonomics, from encapsulation of styles, like definitely use those tools. There's probably a Gatsby plugin for each of them. So like I said, as far as Gatsby itself is concerned, we're not opinionated. Myself personally, I think theme UI is incredible. I think emotion is incredible. So I'm kind of more in the CSS and JS camp, but regardless of where you end up in that discussion, you can use your styling approach of choice in Gatsby.
Great. Our next question is from Jay, and we did say in the chat that like this question is also addressed in the blog post that Kyle just published that's linked below and in the video description. But the question is there some magic behind Gatsby cloud builds and what makes it faster than a Netlify build?
Yeah. So I'd be curious to hear. So I would first encourage you to read Kyle's blog post. It's incredible. So Kyle spells out 3 ways in which what we're doing, is different, and kind of why we can do some pretty great stuff with Gatsby Cloud, particularly Gatsby builds. So one is that we can parallelize work, one of which is we're currently enabling with distributed builds. So across a series of cloud functions, we'll spin up several cloud functions so that we can generate all of your images. And like the truly amazing piece that our cloud infrastructure enables is that when that image is transformed, that work won't be done again. Like we'll short circuit that work. So not only is the initial build faster, but every subsequent build is going to be faster because we're just short circuiting. We're kind of doing no ops on this heavy work. So that's one piece. And the same lens will persist cache, and our caching will get even more consistent, even better compared to other continuous deployment solutions. And then so yeah, I think a lot of it is just because we understand Gatsby applications, because we can tap into this open source process, we can do things that are like uniquely enabled with Gatsby builds. So I would encourage you to read Kyle's blog post. It's truly incredible. It goes into tons of detail and depth as to like what we're doing today and what we plan to do for the future. So definitely give it a read. It's really awesome.
Great. All right, we just got another question, but Kyle, did you want to say hi or add anything else?
Yeah. That was a great answer, Dustin. So I don't have anything to add. Yeah, the blog post goes into a lot more depth. So yeah, feel free to jump over there and read that as well.
Great. So our next question is from Matthew. It's how much of this build functionality will be available for users who are not using Gatsby Cloud, e.g. incremental builds and image processing parallelization? So, what's on open source and what's on cloud?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kyle, you want to go ahead?
I mean, basically, you need specialized infrastructure to make that happen. It's not something that just happens. It's like needs infrastructure to kind of coordinate it all and make it happen. And anyways, and so all the so Gatsby Cloud uses like hooks that are in Gatsby open source to make parallel image processing, parallel other work, and like the caching happen. Yeah, so like if other potentially this could be implemented on other build systems, but initially we expect it just to be available on Gatsby Cloud.
All right, and Sergey says, hey Kyle, thank you for Gatsby, good to see you. So thank you, Sergey, and thanks to everybody else who's said nice things about Gatsby. We're always happy to hear that you all are enjoying it. If anybody else has any questions, now is the time to ask. Otherwise, if we're good, then we'll wrap up, but we'll give you 10 seconds more to answer any questions. And Kyle, Dustin, if you wanted to jump in with anything else. Oh, we got a question from Little Black Duck. Or maybe this is a question for Matthew, but they're asking if Matthew was referring to local builds. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on where that conversation might be going.
So I think he's harkening back to the previous question where
it
was, I think we answered that. So the question was basically, is what we're doing now with distributed builds and what we'll be doing in the future with incremental builds, is that available in the local build process? And the answer to that is some of it just can't be. So like Kyle said, like incremental builds, distributed builds requires this cloud architecture. And so that is why we are doing things in cloud that we won't be able to do in open source. This being said, kind of talk a little bit more about this. We now have like a dedicated performance engineer on the open source project. So we're always doubling down on making Gatsby more performant. These improvements aren't exclusively or only available in cloud. We want to make some of these kind of performance improvements available to every user of Gatsby.
And I also add too, it's like, Gatsby local builds also takes advantage of all the cores, and like all the caching stuff works locally. So yeah, because like we know that like building locally is a really important part of the development cycle. And so we want to make that as fast as possible. It's just what we found is that other kind of like generic, CI/CD solutions don't tend to have great support for what we're doing. In that, we just needed something custom to, actually really make builds super fast. Because to really make the Gatsby model work, we need 10-second build times, consistent, reliable 10-second build times, and that required a fully supported, like first class supported continuous deployment system by the team, that like builds and runs Gatsby.
All right. We did get a couple more questions. First is from Sergey. He's learning how image manipulations and optimization, or learning how image manipulation and optimization works is very hard to learn. Do you have any tips?
I have one tip is just use Gatsby image. So I'm presuming that the piece you might be referring to is wiring up the GraphQL query, which is required for the Gatsby, for like the great niceties that Gatsby image offers with those responsive images, the blur up effect. So my main takeaway is there might be some manualness that we're certainly going to make improvements on, but the main takeaway is use Gatsby image whenever possible. Your end users will thank you because you'll have a more performant site, and the images will be like crazy beautiful, optimized, everything that your end users want.
Great. All right. Well, that looks like all the questions that we have today. If you do have any questions, and certainly if you go and use builds and have any questions, then do come join us for one of our town hall webinars on February 18th. We'll have one in the morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time, which is 10 a.m. Eastern, and then one later at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, 4:30 Eastern. And you can find that information on gatsbyjs.com/resources/webinars. I think without further ado, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you all for joining us today. And thank you so much, Dustin and Kyle. Dustin for giving the demo, and Kyle for jumping in with your expertise. So.
Yeah, appreciate all of you showing up.
Yeah.
Cool. Check it out. Go.
Yeah.
Good now.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
I was gonna say, yeah. Thanks for listening. Go trigger your first build with Gatsby Cloud. Go check it out. Yeah. It's awesome. Don't just take my word for it. Go check it out and let us know what you think.
All right. Great. Well, thanks everybody.
Okay. Bye, y'all.
Right. See everyone. Bye.